Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we'll travel back in time to the 20th Academy Awards, which awarded the films of 1947. George Seaton released a Christmas film in the middle of the summer that turned into a treasured classic, Miracle on 34th Street. The crowd pleaser went on to earn 4 Oscar nominations, winning 3 of those 4 nominations, but it was the more serious-minded Gentleman's Agreement that won Best Picture in the end. So why did Miracle on 34th Street come up short? We'll explore all this and more as we discuss how the Oscar almost went to Miracle on 34th Street. Hello and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host Kevin Jacobson, and today we're talking 1947. And this is the 20th Academy Awards, so getting down to the wire here. Very exciting. And I have brought back a returning fan favorite who you first heard on the Exorcist episode about the films of 1973. Also for a few episodes of On Second Thought about the Grand Budapest Hotel and Babel. And you also helped me talk about this year's Oscar nominations a few months ago, which also kind of feels like a year ago. Please welcome back writer and podcaster for Next Best Picture, and also the host of the Halloweeners movie podcast, Cody Dericks.
Oh, fan favorite. My God. You
were
I
literally voted one of the fan favorites. So yeah.
I feel like Miss Loretta Young here up on stage.
Yes.
Not sure how I got here.
Yeah, we'll definitely
happy nonetheless.
Right. So, Cody, you are the host of the Halloweeners podcast, so what better movie to talk about than Miracle on 34th Street about Christmas? Truly.
Yeah, holidays are kind of my podcasting niche, I guess.
Yeah, you're into it. Mm-hmm. So this is a really interesting year before we get into things, 1947, in the movie industry specifically. Because, we've got the first House Un-American Activities Committee happening, and those are the first hearings for that. We also have Ronald Reagan being elected to the Screen Actors Guild presidency. And, Bugsy Siegel died, who I covered on the Bugsy episode. Murdered, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the birth year of Glenn Close. So truly a historic year for film.
Wow. And I came on thinking this would be kind of a low-key year, but I'm so sorry. Never mind.
There's a lot more happening than you'd expect. Deal. Yes.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Let's talk Miracle on 34th Street.
It's what I want to do in late March.
I think so. In the middle of a pandemic, I think this is what people need. Yes. So this is indeed a Christmas film about a man named Kris Kringle, who becomes the new Santa Claus for Macy's in New York City. And it's very apparent from early on that he is probably the real Santa. And the events coordinator, Doris, is very skeptical of this and, raises her daughter, Susan, to be a skeptic herself, not really believing in Santa at all. But Susan begins to believe upon sort of interacting with Kris. And Kris also meets a lawyer named Fred who would later help him out. And Kris quickly becomes a hit with the local kids and helps sort of improve the Macy's brand overall. And eventually there is a conflict with the man who is giving him a psych evaluation, and Kris is brought to court to prove that he is in fact Santa Claus. And the film was written and directed by George Seaton, with a story credit by Valentine Davies. It stars Maureen O'Hara as Doris, John Payne as Fred, a young Natalie Wood as Susan, and Edmund Gwenn as Kris Kringle. The film received great critical acclaim, was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, winning 3, and the one it did not win was, of course, Best Picture. So this is a Christmas classic here of sorts.
Yes.
Sort of comes in tandem with It's a Wonderful Life, which would come out a year earlier. So, what do you think, Cody? Does it deserve to be called this classic that it has been hailed to be?
I mean, I will say that watching it outside of the Yuletide season is a little bit jarring. It's just a
Yes.
little bit weird to hear jingle bells and such when you're not, completely inundated with it voluntarily or not.
Yes.
But this movie was released in June when it
Hmm.
opened in 1947. So clearly they weren't banking on it being just a Christmas movie, I guess.
Yeah.
I know the studio execs said that people go to the movies in warmer weather, so no matter what the subject matter is, we got to release it in June, which is some, kind of galaxy brain thinking. But
Yeah.
I guess it worked because not only was it a hit at the Oscars, but it's kind of, I would say, undoubtedly more than any other movie this year has a lasting legacy.
Yeah, definitely. So, what are your thoughts overall on the film as it is, just again, outside of the context of Christmas and that whole
I
season of it
I
all?
like
Yeah.
it. I think it's a solid movie.
Yeah.
It never is quite as magical as when you see it when you're a kid. I guess that kind of comes with the territory, but there is stuff to kind of learn and appreciate as an adult. I mean, this kind of turns into the world's jolliest court film by the end. So there's definitely some mature intrigue there, I guess. But it's solid. It's interesting because it's by the end I kind of detest the message of the movie, which is a little bit insidious and kind of like, oh, come on, moms, don't be modern single women. Just, find a man, settle down on Long Island, which is like so many things that especially the Long Island part, you should not do.
Yeah.
So, but even with all that, I kind of just get swept up in it. It's charming and nice, and all the Christmas interactions with Kris Kringle are just really delightful. It's a lovely time.
It's cute. It's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I find very interesting about this film is how it's really addressing this consumerism and sort of the commercializing of Christmas, and how people have become a little skeptical overall of the whole magic of Christmas thing, and how, this is kind of about how one person can make this whole endeavor sort of worth it for everyone. And the film is quite earnest and sweet in kind of its approach, but I don't find it to be too sweet or too saccharine or anything. I think this is,
Agreed.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's the kind of Christmas movie that would definitely be replicated so many times over the years. Just this idea of how people have been so caught up in finding the perfect gift and they become very cynical. But hey, that's not what the season's really about. It's about magic and family and belief and faith.
Yeah, it's interesting though because so much of it takes place in Macy's, and
Yes.
on first watch it kind of feels like a commercial. But from what I understand, they filmed it and then asked permission of Macy's to use their name in the film. So I don't
Power
really know
move.
what they're. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit mixed messaging in terms of anti-commercialism, but like an actual store's name is all over the movie, but they weren't
Yes.
necessarily in on it from the beginning. So it's kind of a mixed bag in that way.
This is true. Yeah. So I guess if you've seen a lot of Christmas films, this is sort of familiar territory, but I think this is one of the first to really try to even address like the commercializing of Christmas in a way, I suppose. But I think what is really a very important thing to talk about first is just this performance of Edmund Gwenn as Kris Kringle. And I mentioned on the Treasure of the Sierra Madre episode that Walter Houston is sort of exactly what you imagine when you think of this grizzled old prospector sort of thing. And for me, it's kind of the same thing with watching Edmund Gwenn here. It's like, this is just who the idea of Santa Claus just makes sense with how he's portraying him. And he just has such a jolliness about him that isn't too forced. It's just it feels authentic.
Right. I mean, you watch it, and maybe the first instinct, this is definitely mine, was to be like, oh, well, how hard of a performance is this, especially for an Oscar-winning performance? You're just playing Santa Claus.
Yeah.
But in a way, I'd like to think he probably kind of created a little bit of the mold, especially in terms of the voice and the jolliness. Of course, we've been getting that since Night Before Christmas, like the actual short story. But I don't know how many times Santa has been portrayed in sound films at this point.
Right.
So he definitely, I'm sure, had a hand in establishing what for, almost 100 years at this point we've identified as Santa Claus tropes.
Yeah. And he just physically, even like, he has such like these kind eyes almost, and just this warm sort of spirit. And also just kind of a confidence in himself that within the context of the story, you really do come to believe that, hey, maybe he really is who he claims to be.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's like a little mischievous. You know, he kind
Yeah.
of like teases shop clerks who don't have the Christmas stuff down exactly. And I think that's another part of the challenge of the role is that he has to do a lot of interacting with children, which is like always there's so many like fine lines there that you got to be careful about in terms of
Yeah.
like being annoying or being creepy or whatever. And he never crosses any of them. And like I said, he, sometimes is a little bit full of himself in a way, but it never comes across as like big-headed. It's a little bit of a tightrope walk in that it looks easy, but it's actually not.
Yeah, a lot trickier than it seems to be, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that great scene in the very beginning where Chris is going to to the shop owner and sort of telling him to fix the arrangement of the reindeer in his storefront. And the store owner is like, "Oh, okay," and just sort of slowly locks the door.
Yeah,
which
as
is
somebody
fun.
who's worked like customer service, that kind of was a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so
Same.
much.
Yes. Let's just, all right, let's move this along. But I think the film does a pretty good job of, and Gwen himself does a phenomenal job of just being so convincing in the role that you sort of just fully buy it from the beginning. And
Exactly.
even if he isn't, it's pointless to try to disrupt what he's doing almost, just because he's doing so much good with the kids and the community and also these corporations on top of everything, that there's no need to really upset the apple cart, I think, is sort of the message there. And that's like the whole
Exactly.
thing with keeping up the Santa thing with kids. It's all just the joy it brings and the magic. And I think that is what it captures best of all. I think is just,
Yeah, even
yeah.
the like most, icy-hearted people in the movie, except for that evil psychiatrist,
Yes.
are pretty much melted by the end.
Right. Yes. But there's some interesting elements around that as well, because we also have this connection, this sort of romance-ish sort of thing with Doris and Fred. I wanted to talk about the Maureen O'Hara character, because that's for me a little bit a criticism I would have overall, is just that it feels like this feels like her story for like the first half of it, and then it sort of disappears almost. She really goes into the background and it becomes, the big circus of the trial and everything, and it feels like she really recedes into the background a little bit. But what are your thoughts on that character and the way the film treats her?
Yeah, at first you're like, oh, she's the lead. And then it kind of bounces around all over the place. It focuses on Chris a lot of the time to the point where you're like, he's kind of the lead. And
Yeah.
then the boyfriend's lawyer is really a big part of the third act. And also, plus the Maureen O'Hara, modern mom of it all kind of played derisively is a little bit cringy to watch nowadays.
Yeah.
She's kind of seen as this modern single woman, and the movie kind of makes it pretty clear that they are not in favor of this. People in charge of the movie, but I guess that kind of just comes with the times, especially in like a post-war, really settling down baby boom kind of era.
Right. And we have the Catholic Legion of Decency
Oh,
that
what they do now.
they gave the movie a B, calling it morally objectionable in part, and
Is
that
that B
was
for blasphemous?
it might be.
'Cause
um, but they say this was mainly due to the fact that O'Hara portrayed a divorcee in the film.
oh yeah.
So,
Mhm.
I mean, make of that what you will.
Yeah, well, it
But,
scandalized me, so I can understand.
yes, highly offensive,
Mhm.
even still. And it's also just kind of interesting, that element, because I feel like this is a film that talks about like the commercializing of Christmas, but it doesn't really get into the Christian element of Christmas too much, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I that's more reserved for the other Christmas movie this year, The Bishop's Wife. This is more focusing on a very modern idea of Christmas as gift giving,
yeah,
which I think is uh, not a bad approach because then it makes it, even more accessible to people who maybe aren't religious but still kind of do the Christmas thing.
right. Right, exactly. But it's just interesting to me that like their biggest objection would be like, hey, she's a divorcee, and not the fact that they don't really even talk about Jesus or anything.
No, there's not a single major in this movie.
Yeah.
No stars, nothing.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a little bit of discussion of like belief and faith, kind of vaguely, but yeah, all kind of in the context of believing in Santa.
Exactly.
So.
It's not in a religious sense. It's kind of just in a general sense.
Right.
So I guess you could take that and do what you got to do with it. But
yeah. Also, we have Natalie Wood here. Again, a young Natalie Wood.
Oh, she's so precocious.
I think she's wonderful. Yeah. I mean, she has sass for days, and I live for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of shaking heads and side-eyeing. It's very, and again, it's similar to the Kris Kringle role. It could so easily be irritating. How many times have we have to watch the precocious child role that you just want to, toss him in the river? This is definitely not that. It's very charming.
I love the one moment where Doris is explaining to Susan that Chris is on trial, and Susan just goes, "You mean like for murder?" She just has like this way about her.
Dark energy.
Yes. Like, oh, geez.
The worst.
All right. There's also that moment where I believe it's Fred talking to her about fairy tales. And she's just like, "Oh, one of those." It's sort of like
she's having none of it.
That deadpan tone. I think she's so perfect for that. Many of
giants aren't real, shutting them down all over the place.
Right. I mean, many of these lines are pretty straightforward, I think, on the page, but I just think she makes a meal out of them, and it just she gives her so much personality that, yeah. I mean, I would have loved a nomination for her, to be honest.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, she's how old in this? She's let's see, 9. It looks like.
Yeah.
8 years old.
Yeah. So yeah.
Good job, Natalie.
Like I said, I think she just makes the most out of her screen time completely and does not indulge too much. Yeah. We also have Thelma Ritter here in her first role.
When she popped up, I always happy to see her. Yeah.
Yes.
What
truly
a
delight.
beacon of just wonder.
you feel like you're in good hands.
Exactly. That's it. She's a pro.
She's uncredited, of course, because
as usual.
That's her lot in life, especially at this early stage in her career. But she's playing the mother of a boy who wants something that Macy's doesn't carry, and so we have Chris telling them where they could find the thing at a competing store, and Thelma Ritter makes it known to this Macy's employee that, the act of telling her that it's at a competing store is what really kicks off this whole thing, right? Of Macy's really booming with customers and causing I think it's Gimbels to implement the same policy. So, I mean, Thelma Ritter, her impact, right?
Yeah, and even when she talks to the manager about how surprised and delighted she is that they're being sent to a different store, she still seems kind of put off by it. Like, she still seems a little bothered. It's just a great energy.
Yeah. And I mean, really, speaking of someone who makes the most of a very limited role, it sucks that she's uncredited here because, she does have her impact in her small little way.
She's uncredited, but anybody who knows her will immediately recognize her.
Exactly. These trial scenes, I want to get your opinion on this aspect.
I mean, it's pretty cute.
Yes.
They bring a child up at one point, and the head of Macy's has to say he believes in Santa Claus. It's very family friendly, I'll say.
Yeah. And I love the judge here. Gene Lockhart playing him is just doing the absolute most. Again, with a small role. And just all of his facial expressions and how he sort of indicates that he cares about public perception very much because he wants to run for office in the future. Just this really fun, little just this side story that doesn't really have a lot of impact on things, but is just very fun. And the way he says "overruled" at one point made me actually laugh out loud.
Yeah, I like the subplot of him being up for election and just keeping that in mind because it's part of, I think, what makes the screenplay so good are these little tiny humanist touches. And that's, definitely something that would influence the judge. So I think it's smart. I think it's smart screenwriting.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, what do we think of how it actually proceeds, and as far as legally? Neither of us are lawyers, but
I have no idea what's happening. Yeah, it's
like a lot of this feels like a little fantastical with our approach here, but you sort of just go with it.
Yeah, the whole idea of, well, if the U.S. Postal Service is going to bring letters addressed to Santa Claus to this Santa Claus here, that being a branch of the government, therefore the government recognizes him as Santa Claus, case closed. It's very like high school debates. You really think you got a great, brilliant argument, but this movie kind of thinks that is a good argument. Yeah. I don't know. It's a whimsical, fantastical movie. It's the least threatening court trial on film of all time, so I don't really mind it being resolved like that.
I would love to follow it if this were in real life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the whole mania of that is another really fun aspect of this. There's a whole section here on the Wikipedia page for Miracle on 34th Street about legal inaccuracies.
Oh my god.
Which I kind of love.
Yeah, but also, like, who cares?
Yeah. This is
nobody's watching this in law school. This isn't, this
actually
isn't Kill a Mockingbird or anything.
Right. Well, anyway, so I want to actually go back to the romance-ish sort of aspect between Doris and Fred. Do we think they have chemistry? Are they cute together? What's happening here?
I mean,
does it
fine.
land?
It's just I truly cannot. I watched the movie about a week ago, and I don't have a solid memory of any actual like interaction with them romantically that was memorable, except for the very, very end. It feels kind of perfunctory, like a lot of romances this year and in this era of Hollywood do, but it's, I guess, necessary for the resolution. I don't know. It doesn't really thrill me.
It does feel slightly added in just for an added romance, which is something that a lot of films in the 40s would sort of do in their studio notes and all of that, of trying to be like, hey, we want women to come to the film, put in a romance.
Yeah, James Love kissing. I don't know.
Yes.
But it really does kind of tie into the little bit insidious nature of, well, even if you think you got it figured out, ladies, you should really just find a man to settle down.
Yes. Yeah. And I sort of feel like the film doesn't do a great job of suggesting how the Doris character really resolved to that, of wanting that life. I don't even know, honestly, if she does want to settle down by the end of it, or if she's just sort of placating her daughter.
That's kind of what I got from it. Yeah. But both with the Kris Kringle of it all, and I think just the acclimating to having a father figure in her life. I think she probably was just seeing the cues from her daughter and going along with that. Obviously this is fairly underwritten, which for this movie is kind of surprising because, again, the screenplay otherwise is pretty solid.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like I said, it just goes back to, it feels like she has such a strong start. Like she has such a great first third and first half that you feel like this is going to really turn out to be her story and how she grows from being a skeptic to being a believer, as it were. And it sort of isn't that, but it kind of tries to force it at the end, but not in a way that really feels organic to telling how she got there, almost.
Yeah, because if each character is going on their little own journey of belief and faith in a way, it kind of feels like the thing that she learns to believe in is men, which, okay. I mean, like, on one hand, yes, but also, come on.
Yes. I'm trying to see if there's any other side plots. There's actually quite a few more sort of side elements to this film than you might expect or remember it being.
He pops into a lot of individuals' lives for just one moment. There's a janitor character who is being told by a psychiatrist that his affection for playing Santa Claus is linked to something that may have happened in his past. It feels very weirdly anti-Freudian, which is another maybe like sinister undercurrent of anti-psychology in this movie, but it doesn't explicitly bother me.
Yeah. I think his, also Edmund Gwen's scenes with him are pretty special.
Yes, yeah. It's a very endearing energy that's hard to do without being saccharine.
Yes. And the psychologist character is just this thoroughly loathsome figure.
Oh yeah.
as presented by the film.
Right, and not necessarily because he's a psychologist. He's shown to be kind of just like a terrible husband and stuff. But
Yes.
it is, I think, telling that the only straight up evil is strong, but like bad-minded character is a psychologist.
A psychologist, a skeptic in the case of Maureen O'Hara.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an interesting underlying message there.
I really like the scene where he sings and speaks Dutch with the little girl who only speaks Dutch.
That's very nice.
And it's the first time that Natalie Wood's character, because she's like kind of spying on him, watching this happen. It's where you can see it working in her head, like, oh wow, maybe there is more to this guy than I thought. I really like that scene.
Yes, that's a really nice scene, and I'm glad that was included. Yeah,
this was nice.
Yeah, there's also a small role for Jack Albertson, Academy Award winner, as the mail sorter who, again, kicks off a lot of the evidence being presented about the post office. Nice to see him show up.
I love the idea that they're just their biggest motivation for bringing the letters is they have all these letters just sitting in the post office anyway.
Just gotta get rid of it.
It would be great to just clear some space. And again, as somebody who works in a work environment where things pile up, I really identify with that.
I bet.
Thank
you. So any other details as far as the filmmaking aspect of this, just beyond the screenplay and the performances?
I mean, the direction is pretty anonymous. It's solid in terms of its character specificity and the things we keep mentioning about these tricky performances, but it never really makes a show of itself, which is fine. There's some moments in the court scene where we see what's happening in the characters' heads, especially the head of Macy's at one point, and that's effective, and we understand what they're going for. But I can see why this wasn't nominated for Best Director.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that it does not feel like a super auteur sort of a film in the sense that it would get nominated for Best Director. And it made me wonder, watching it again, whether it would have more of that visual flair maybe than I hadn't remembered. But I would say it's pretty, I wouldn't say flat by any means, but just it's sturdy. Sturdy, yes. George Seaton, a very sturdy director.
Sure. What a compliment.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's primarily an acting and writing accomplishment, I would say.
Right. And I do always credit the director with some semblance of actor success, because that's not their job, but it's not only their job.
Yes. I don't know if there's any like super technical elements either that are super showy in that way, even cinematography really. Or music. Yeah.
The score isn't really noticeable. The cinematography, again, just shows you what you need to see. It's I keep saying sturdy and solid, these very like macho words, but it really is, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty well edited. I will give it that.
Yeah, it has an energy to it.
Zips right by.
Exactly.
So
it's light without being frivolous.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just looking at the poster right now, and it really sort of suggests a different kind of film than
apparently
what we get.
The original trailer didn't include the fact that it is a Christmas movie at all.
Right.
Like no mentions of Santa Claus or anything.
I saw
which I guess is part of the we are releasing this in the middle of summer aspect of it. We're going to trick them, but it's an odd approach for the thing that would eventually become the calling card for the movie.
Right. I mean, I'm looking at it now, and the only indication is just a faraway shot of Edmund Gwenn as Santa hugging Natalie Wood, but the foreground is just Maureen O'Hara and John Payne looking at each other.
Could be any old man hugging a little girl.
This is true, exactly. I mean, we've got red hair on Maureen O'Hara and a green tie on John Payne, so vaguely Christmassy.
Yeah, it's subtle, but
yeah,
if that's catching your eye and you're going, oh, Yuletide joy, you really are, doing the work.
Yes. But yeah, again, just an interesting thing, again, that it comes out in May of all times and did become a hit. So, yeah. Well, for those who haven't seen it in a while or would like to see it for the first time, it is actually on Disney Plus. So,
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh.
it is.
I have it on DVD, so that's how I watched it.
Well, there you go. But yeah, one of the few runners-up I'm talking about that is actually on Disney Plus. I believe the other one would be Mary Poppins, and that's probably it.
That's it.
Yeah. So there you go, Disney Plus subscribers who are stuck indoors and looking for some Yuletide joy in this.
In the second day of spring here. Yeah.
Yes. Anything else you wanted to discuss here before we talk about the Oscars?
I just think it's really it's based on an original story, and I don't believe that means it was a separately published story. It was like a concept.
Yeah.
But the actual concept for the movie is, I think it's kind of gotten so ubiquitous that we don't realize how clever the idea is. Like, what if Santa Claus showed up in Macy's and it was the real one? I think it's an original, clever concept.
It's a cute idea, absolutely, and you can see why it would win Oscars for writing. Just
exactly,
certainly the one for story, but it's a really cute and clever concept that would be sort of aped for a long time in Christmas movies of the future.
Exactly.
So give it some credit. So with that, we will move on to our next segment. When we come back, we will be discussing why Miracle on 34th Street lost Best Picture to Gentleman's Agreement.
That is the greatest picture I have ever made. And I've got the angle on the trailer. Boys, we've got to get across to the public that that picture has everything. Why, it's hilarious. It's romantic. It's tender. It's charming. It's delightful. It's exciting. And it's groovy.
Yes, Mr. Schaefer.
That does it, boss.
Mr. Schaefer, you've got a great idea.
Naturally. Now, I'll tell you what we do.
And we're back. So now we'll be discussing why Miracle on 34th Street lost Best Picture to Gentleman's Agreement. Miracle on 34th Street was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for Edmund Gwenn, Best Screenplay, and Best Story. And it won Supporting Actor, Screenplay, and Story. The Screenplay one is certainly very noteworthy, because if you look at that category and what it beat, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's 3 other Best Picture nominees, one of which obviously becomes the winner, and it already won a writing award that night, so I don't really understand the desire to throw all these awards at it and then not give it Best Picture.
It is odd.
Yeah.
Yes. But let's talk Gentleman's Agreement and
how...
I've
been waiting for years to talk Gentleman's Agreement.
Well, here we are.
All the kids love it. Yeah.
Yes. So why do we think that this film wins Best Picture over all of these others, but especially Miracle on 34th Street?
I mean, if you had to pick one movie from this lineup that felt the most Oscar-y, it would probably be this. important. It's very, dramatic, but not over the top. It's not very stylized, so it's pretty digestible. It makes you feel good to vote for it. It's got a nice, socially liberal sensibility to it. It's solidly made. It makes a lot of sense why it won Best Picture.
Yeah. I think this is a very classic sort of social issues drama that really speaks to an issue that was very prevalent at the time, which was anti-Semitism. And we have Gregory Peck here playing a journalist who is writing a story on anti-Semitism and decides the best way of really just nailing down that experience is by pretending to be Jewish himself and seeing how it goes.
Yeah, and it takes him a while to get to that idea when it seems like a pretty obvious scoop, I'd say, but it takes him a good half hour to come up with that, and then he acts like he discovered a new element or something. He's very excited about it.
Yes. Everything has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like he's going around experiencing a lot of I guess you could say microaggressions and also more overt examples sort of prejudice. And this is a story that I don't know if it would be done today. There's this added element here, though, that makes it a lot more interesting than you'd expect and sort of nuanced, which is the Dorothy McGuire character.
Yeah, without her and what her character does in terms of moving the story along, I think it would be a pretty basic social movie. It's, kind of saying, hey, did you know anti-Semitism is bad and it's here, is not very groundbreaking, I'd say, especially 2 years after, the Holocaust ended.
Yeah.
But which is weirdly not present at all in any discussions in this movie, which I think is maybe another reason why it did well with the Academy, because it doesn't bring up any, atrocities. It kind of keeps it to a very, like you said, microaggression and just a generalized prejudice way rather than, outright genocide. But the Kathy character played by Dorothy McGuire, she basically is the definition of a well-meaning liberal who is, of course she opposes anti-Semitism and she, believes in justice, but the second it momentarily disrupts her life or inconveniences her in any way, she doesn't say anything.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it kind of makes the movie.
Mm-hmm. And you see, yes, at the beginning, she's like, of course, that's, I believe that, and all of my friends, of course, we're not anti-Semitic. But then when certain comments are made at a party, for instance, she doesn't say anything. Things happen as far as like a community, and
it's a very like waspy
yes.
retreat in a way.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yes, where these very terrible policies are put in place and she sort of just looks the other way. And I think that she is quite good at sort of portraying that type of person who does think of themselves as liberal but is very willing to just let things slide by as long as it doesn't really disrupt their life in any way.
Yeah, it's a pretty, I don't want to say brave, but like it's an interesting thing to put in a film set in America, again, just 2 years after a war, where like exactly where patriotism, I'm sure, is pretty unequaled. So I gotta applaud them for that. It's the kind of character that would trickle all the way down to like the parents in Get Out, where it's like,
exactly.
I would have voted for Obama a third time. That sentiment of no, I'm on the right side. Don't worry.
Yes. We also have Celeste Holm here, who wins Best Supporting Actress. She's playing like a fashion editor, I think, who is a real sort of life of the party type.
Oh yeah, she's a firecracker.
Is also quite lonely at the same time and really starts to fall for Gregory Peck and doesn't really get what she wants, and it's sort of unresolved. I gotta say, I think the last third of the movie I was really on its wavelength, and then the last shot of the movie I was like kind of underwhelmed by. Yes.
To spoil a 70-year-old movie, he goes back to Kathy, which is a little bit disappointing because she does have a moment where she talks to a friend of theirs who's Jewish, and he kind of tells her like, hey, be better.
Right.
And I guess that's enough for Gregory Peck's character to go, you know what, let's give this a second chance. But Celeste Holm is right there.
She's right there, and she's fun, and she isn't that problematic.
Nope.
She seems like the person that he should have ended up with.
Yeah, it's a very fun performance. Every time she's on screen, it's a joy.
Yes, she's just living for everything, and it's very fun. So I would say that was a pretty deserved supporting actress win overall.
Yeah, from what I've seen of that category, there's nothing I'm very upset didn't win. So I'll let her have it.
Yeah. So this is all to say that this was a film that really was positioned very early on as this is the film to beat. This is the film that is having the social relevance and speaks to something of our time. And it got very hyperbolic as far as what the press was saying and what the studios were wanting to put out there of what this film means and represents for Hollywood and the culture at large. And so in a Best Picture category, that the only other one that really addresses that is Crossfire, which is a little bit more of a B movie film noir sort of a thing comparatively. Then there's really no other option than Gentleman's Agreement for an Academy in 1947.
And if you look at the other winners in the 40s, it really does feel of a piece with the important issues and very American ideals, like Best Years of Our Lives and The Lost Weekend and All the King's Men. These movies that focus on political or social moments and bring light to them and a little bit of resolution. It really feels very post-war, we're going to analyze this country and see what's great about it.
Yeah. But looking at that whole lineup, I don't know personally if this is one that is super rewatchable, to be honest. I mean, I think it's a good film. I don't know how much it really holds up outside of, again, some of that, the way it undercuts the sort of white liberalism sort of thing,
Exactly. All the Kathy stuff, I think, is pretty incredible for a film from the 40s. Everything else is pretty standard. And, it'd be one thing if there weren't other movies discussing these types of issues at the time, because then it would feel very like, oh wow, a movie finally unearthing this truth. But Crossfire is right there doing the same thing.
Yeah, right. It's interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, when you compare that to Miracle on 34th Street, I think that is a film that clearly, based on the wins for supporting actor, screenplay, and story, was a film that really touched people emotionally, and they wanted to root for it and pick it. Even over, again, I mean, it wins over Gentleman's Agreement and Great Expectations, which are two films that I think would typically win a screenplay category. Even Crossfire probably would do it,
I mean, the thing is, though, the Academy doesn't really like to reward Christmas movies very much. It's an odd little, like, not even statistic, more like a pattern. And it's part of what I was, even all the way back to this past Oscars when people were predicting Klaus, I was saying, no, they don't they don't like Christmas movies, and I was right.
Yeah. I mean, it got nominated.
Yeah, of course. But, they don't like to give them trophies. I mean, there's 2 Christmas movies in the lineup this year, and neither one came out on top.
Yeah. But we gave one to Edmund Gwenn.
Yeah, for literal Santa Claus, so that's true.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's get to a few questions, shall we? Well, let's start with Glenda Miss Jackson, if you're nasty.
Hello.
Saying, do you think Gwen is lead or supporting? I found him more of a lead.
Okay, so I think I mentioned this on this very podcast before. I don't really get too hurt or upset by a category. I care, but I'm not, rending my garments over it.
Okay.
But I think he probably is supporting. I think it really does start out, like we said, very much Maureen O'Hara's movie, and then by the end it's I don't remember the character's name, the husband-to-be lawyer's movie, and Edmund Gwenn is there throughout the whole thing, but he really does feel supporting to me, and I think the entire cast is probably supporting, because it's very vignette-y, and it's a lot of people talking about his character when he's not there, so he might feel more lead than he actually is. But to me, he feels supporting.
Yes, I think he has a lot of impact, but that this is a case of just a character that doesn't really feel like this is necessarily told from his perspective.
Exactly. And he doesn't go through a monumental change of character. It wouldn't make sense if he did.
Right.
He starts pretty fully formed, and it's up to the other characters to kind of work around him. But Yeah, I see him as supporting.
Yeah, I do too. He has a good chunk of screen time for sure, but I think I would actually agree that everyone here is probably just supporting each other. There's no real clear lead.
Yeah, I guess if you wanted to say Maureen O'Hara was a lead actress,
Yeah, I guess.
You know, I'm not gonna say anything against that.
Yeah. This is from Ronaldo Sosa, who said, if Edmund Gwenn had been placed in lead, do you think he could have won over Coleman? And would Widmark have won supporting?
You know, because the Coleman win, he was a veteran actor. I'm pretty sure this is his like fourth nomination. And it's a very, 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 very showy role. You know, it's about people behind the scenes at a show. You see a lot of plays within plays. It's about mental anguish. It's almost like Black Swan in a way.
Yeah.
So it really does feel like a very much awards friendly performance. But you know, Edmund Gwenn is Santa Claus, so I think because it's a Best Picture nominee, there's a possibility. But you know, both lead categories this year went to non-Best Picture nominees up against Best Picture nominee in their category. So, you know, I don't know. I wasn't there for all the ins and outs of the politics that year, obviously. You weren't either, I don't think so. So, mysterious.
I was not.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I really can't decide.
Yeah.
There's good arguments either way. What do you think?
I think that the Ronald Coleman performance is incredibly showy and exactly the type of performance that wins Best Actor all the time. Almost all the time. You know, I can't say the same for Michael Keaton and Birdman, sadly.
Sure.
But that is just so clearly in the Academy's wheelhouse. And a performance like what Edmund Gwenn does just doesn't really tend to win Best Actor very much.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
You know? And
it's not very showy. It's very solid character work, which is really usually relegated to the supporting categories.
Right. So I want to say that Ronald Coleman might have just edged him out, but it would have been a close one.
Yeah.
Joe Gouveia said, why no nomination for Maureen O'Hara?
You know, I don't know. Because the Best Actress field, I only got to see The Farmer's Daughter and Gentleman's Agreement, and neither of those performances are really, you know, things I see the grand desire to throw Oscars at. I think Dorothy McGuire does some really solid stuff towards the end of Gentleman's Agreement, but the first like hour and a half, she's kind of unmemorable in a way, unfortunately. So she has a lot of strange reaction shots. Like she looks really uncomfortable for a lot of the movie. That may have just been me projecting, but she had a lot of moments where she was smiling with her teeth, but not with her eyes. So it just looked very almost off-putting in a way that maybe was a hint to the like insidious nature of her character to come.
It was intentional.
That's, I think, being generous, frankly. It didn't really read as that to me, unfortunately. Sorry, Miss McGuire. But if she was nominated over Dorothy, I would be very okay with that.
I would just say that it's not really like a great performance overall that I would nominate, to be honest. Maureen O'Hara. You know, I think she's very good. But
yeah, it's not memorable. But
it just doesn't stand out to me as a big acting showcase, and that is partly due to the writing, quite frankly.
Yeah.
That I
mean,
like
she doesn't really have much to do. She plays hurried and frantic well in the beginning when she's ordering people around at the parade. That's fun to watch.
Yeah.
But then she just has to have like a lot of talks with her daughter. So
True. Let's see. Well, this is from Juan Carlos Ollano, who says Dorothy McGuire, lead or supporting.
Oh boy. I'm fine with her being in lead. The other supporting ladies from the movie are very much supporting, but she doesn't really do much on her own besides a scene later in the movie where she again talks to their friend Dave. So either way would be fine by me. I guess I'm talking myself into agreeing with her being supporting. But again, there's two other much more supporting characters in the lineup from the same movie.
Yes. And that's why I would keep her in the lead, even though this is very shaky. I think this is a really classic case of she could really fit into either one of them and it would make sense.
Sure.
Like you said, she really comes on strong by the end. And I think that is justification enough for her to be in lead, that it really feels like oh, this isn't just Gregory Peck's story. This is also a story of her her journey of realizing the insidiousness of her behavior. Almost.
Right, that's true, because the other supporting characters in the movie don't really have a journey per
No,
se. They're
certainly
kind of
Celeste Holm doesn't.
No, definitely not. She has a journey straight to my heart, but that's all.
Exactly.
She, is there to support the story for sure. Whereas the Darth McGuire character really does help move it along.
Yeah. Well, this is from Catherine Short, who said, how did Gregory Peck get so many nominations in the 1940s for playing a very similar, noble, stoic man who is almost always morally correct in every film?
Yeah, he's got a compass and it's pointing the right direction. He's very sturdy. He's really good at portraying that kind of, I'm right and listen to me kind of portrayal, and I always agree with him.
Yeah, he's very convincing.
Mm-hmm. He's also shockingly young. He was 31 this year, and he reads as, I think because of his presence, much older, but I think that may have also had a part in why he didn't win this year. Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, I think just to speak to overall why the Academy liked him in these kinds of roles, it's just, sometimes the Academy just gets into a pattern of liking an actor in a certain kind of a role. And
Miss Thelma Ritter.
Yes.
6 nominations.
Yeah. And I mean, to have a modern day comparison, that's sort of what's happened with Octavia Spencer.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like the same thing with Katharine Hepburn. It's just sort of this is this person's style, and they are inherently captivating in that particular kind of a performance. And
right, because once you like them doing it one time, it's very easy to go, oh, he's doing it again. I love when he does that.
Oh, I love when he does that. I love when he's stoic. Yes. But I do too, though, so I can't say that I'm not guilty of that.
Exactly.
And I love his eyebrows. I'm just going to mention it again. Love those eyebrows.
He's a handsome guy in this movie.
Love him. Ugh. Well, this is from Eggs.
All right.
Do you think if the Academy knew that On the Waterfront was just a few years away, they would not give Gentleman's Agreement Best Picture?
I mean, this is the kind of thing we always ask. It's like the better movies on the horizon. But between this and On the Waterfront is Streetcar, and they still didn't go with that. So I don't know. I think it was the right movie in the right time, Gentleman's Agreement. And this isn't a super strong year in terms of, there's other solid movies, but nothing that, feels like a great injustice that it lost. So I think it was kind of inevitable. I mean, it gets 8 Oscar nominations, and the next closest nominee tally is 5. So it was pretty clearly being set up as the winner.
This is the one.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think that the Academy would think that way, to be honest. I think they're fine with Gentleman's Agreement, and they're fine with On the Waterfront, and congrats to Elia Kazan for these 2 great films.
Yeah.
That's basically what they would probably think.
Yeah. On the Waterfront, though, I think is one of those just like, it's absolutely undeniable. So even though they already gave it to him pretty recently before that, it's kind of like Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs, where you go, yes, she won 3 years ago, I know, but like, look at this thing.
This is like, damn. Yeah. Or to use a comparison from around this era, sort of like Olivia de Havilland, who won the previous year in 1946, and then here comes The Heiress, and it's like, oh damn, this is something.
Like, we don't care, we know, we got to do it again.
Yeah. Or Mahershala Ali. How about that? Or
Mahershala Ali, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's connected to a Best Picture winner. That's a whole nother thing.
Well, yes. Anyway. Let's move on to these other Best Picture nominees. So first off, I want to talk about a film that some people thought I might talk about here because of who's involved and because of its reputation, and that is Great Expectations. So this is a David Lean film, one of his more well-known films, especially in this early era. Adaptation of Charles Dickens, a big sort of literary feeling to it that a lot of films would be nominated for Best Picture with this sort of a gravitas, and it gets 5 nominations. It does not get any for acting, which is part of why I chose Miracle on 34th Street, in addition to the fact that Miracle on 34th Street beat the screenplay. I think that's a pretty big deal.
I think above the line wins like that always kind of trump the like tech wins like this movie got.
Exactly. Yeah. So that just made sense to me, even though it might feel weird because Miracle on 34th Street does not really feel like a super classic Best Picture winner compared to what Great Expectations is. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just part of it's a symptom of this year was set up mostly for Gentleman's Agreement. There's not a clear consensus second place.
Yeah, which is why I went to Twitter for asking what the hell was the runner-up here. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Great Expectations?
Okay, so here's the thing. I cannot stand this book. I had to read it when I was in high school, and it's to this day my least favorite book I've ever had to read. If I had to erase a story from existence, it would be Great Expectations. I find it just rambling and just kind of pointless and weirdly misogynistic in parts, and it just is not for me. That being said, editing the story down to a less than 2-hour movie is probably the best way to do it because the book is so absolutely needlessly wordy and unending. So because the story I just inherently cannot get behind, it didn't really grab me, but I don't think you could have directed it any better than David Lean did. I think it's a pretty solid portrayal of putting us in the character's head in the way that Dickens tries to do. Especially when Pip is a child, it is very much filmed through like a child's eyes, and then as he grows, we see the world through his eyes, and it's really effective.
Yeah. The production design, the cinematography, everything visually, I think is a step above even all of these films nominated for Best Picture, honestly. And I think it very deservedly won for those two Oscars for art direction and cinematography. I mean, story-wise, I sort of understand what you're saying there. I don't have quite that level of like hatred for it.
And I know that's me bringing that to the table, and it's something I just cannot inherently separate.
Baggage.
But, oh well.
Yes. I'm also not exactly that impressed with John Mills as Pip, to be honest. He just sort of feels a little too old for the part.
Sure.
Considering Pip is supposed to be like 20 and he's like 38.
Yeah.
But this is like it's an epic story, and I think even like you were saying with the fact that it's shortened to 2 hours or so, it can almost feel a little rushed for me. That it goes through a lot of plot points, especially in the middle to the end portion, where it's just like, wow, things are really happening.
Yeah, well, in the book, nothing happens, so I'll take
well,
that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But just the look of it all, the sort of monochromatics is just really stunning, I think. And there's so many great set pieces, like Miss Havisham's mansion that's sort of in decay, and the part where it gets on fire, I love all that stuff.
Oh yeah, as a fan of the show Hoarders, I was really feeling that segment. It's really appealing to me.
Love the hair as well.
Yeah, the whole first 20 minutes too that are like set in swampy moors and graveyards, and it's all misty and wind blown. I loved all that stuff. It's very evocative.
Good texture.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I get the sense overall that because it didn't get those acting nominations, which, I mean, this is a kind of film that would get acting nominations, right? I mean, there's so many different performances there that, the Miss Havisham, even Pip, just all of these characters are so full that you sort of expect that, but it did not happen.
But I'm not really. I'm like looking at the cast list now. There's nobody really jumping out at me that I would be not surprised if they got nominated. I mean, like we said, John Mills' Pip is kind of underwhelming. I personally think Martisha Hunt as Miss Havisham is a little bit too chill for that character. She doesn't seem kind of the like shocked portrayal that I would expect from somebody who has, clearly lost their shit. And the rest are characters that kind of just float in and out. I like the prisoner at the beginning. I think he's good, but otherwise I don't. I mean, let me know if you have anybody you might nominate, but I can't really.
I mean, if there was someone, I would say Finlay Curry as Magwitch, who is the prisoner.
Yeah.
Who comes back to sort of haunt Pip in later life. And I think he stands out in a very supporting actor kind of a way that I'm a little surprised that he's not here. But we have Alec Guinness here, a very, very young Alec Guinness. Not that I would nominate him, but
yeah, I barely recognized
worth
him.
noting. But yeah, I think I would agree that there's not really a huge standout acting performance.
Yeah, I think you're right about Magwitch, but it's even that I'm like fine having it not be nominated.
Yeah. But, walking away with art direction and cinematography, which it won over films that were not even nominated for Best Picture, and there was only 2 or 3 nominations in those categories, and then only having 5 nominations for this adaptation of an epic novel. I don't think that's great.
Yeah, if a Dickens movie couldn't even win screenplay, it was not the runner-up.
Yeah. I respect, again, all of the craft elements involved there, and you can't go wrong with visuals with a David Lean film, even in black and white, but especially so in color. Well, we have this other question from Catherine Short about David Lean, saying, I've always felt that David Lean's later work is emotionally cold and serves as an excuse for him to assemble 3 hours of beautiful images and not much else. Great Expectations is full of emotion, and he seems very engaged in the story. Why do you think this is?
That's a leading question there, but I mean, I've seen the big David Lean stuff, The Bridge on the River Kwai, Passage to India, of course, Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, and I think especially Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago, pretty damn emotionally rich. I'm not somebody who really loves Bridge on the River Kwai, so that one kind of just goes over my head, but I really do find everything Lawrence of Arabia does and Dr. Zhivago's romance really emotionally investing.
Yeah.
Personally.
I mean, I don't really feel like there is that much of a difference between early era David Lean and later David Lean, honestly.
Yeah, his running times get bigger, but...
Well, yes. The longer and longer we get to, like, Ryan's Daughter, and it's just, like, insane.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a good reason to watch that one.
Yes.
It has not come along yet.
Well, we have this Staying at Home that we can devote an entire day to Ryan's Daughter.
It takes a literal pandemic to get me to watch that movie, but okay.
Wow. Love that. But no, I guess I sort of disagree overall with the sentiment of the question, that I just feel like he never really lost that emotional resonance, and I don't really love Dr. Zhivago, to be honest, which we talked about on the show, but even there you could really just feel everything he's pouring into all of those minutes of that film. Even all the way to Passage to India, same thing. So
yeah, and the thing I think he becomes excelled at is assembling an amazing team behind him.
Yeah,
because the cinematography, the sets, the acting, and especially the music, I think, really help the movie later in the 60s and 70s to really bring out that emotional resonance.
That's true. Yeah, all those technical elements. Yeah. So let's talk about Crossfire.
Oh, please, yes.
Oh, now we're excited. Okay. Yeah. So, much like Gentleman's Agreement, Crossfire is a film that tackles anti-Semitism, but this is much more of a thriller, film noir sort of thing about a Jewish man who is murdered, and all the signs sort of point to this group of soldiers that just got out of the army. So Robert Ryan and Gloria Graham are both nominated for Oscars. Let's talk about this film. You seem excited about it, so I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, this one's great. This is another one that I had not seen. I'd always, heard of it. It's been on my long list, but this finally gave me reason to watch it, and it is a treasure, I think. It's really well made, and it really kind of tackles those same social relevant themes that Gentleman's Agreement tackles, but I think in a more horrifying way. Mm-hmm. It's obviously it's based around a murder, so there's an actual manifestation of hate in this rather than just kind of the idea of it in Gentleman's Agreement. So I don't know if that is partly what makes it feel more dynamic and relevant or riveting in a way, but I found this very exciting. I think it looks amazing. I think the noir elements of it really help bring out the inherent seediness of hate in a way. It kind of shows it to be the back alley gross thing that we all know it is, because it's shot in this way that's feels surreptitious. So it kind of lends a theme of griminess to the idea that is inherently grimy. It personifies it in a way.
Yeah.
I really love the ensemble. Even though I had a little bit of trouble telling the soldiers apart at first because
there's a lot of men,
white men, black hair,
a lot of them played by actors named Robert.
Exactly.
So
a lot of bobbies.
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, I love that these two films, though, that Gentleman's Agreement and Crossfire, are both nominated. They both come out in the same year, nominated for Best Picture. And I just love that they're together here because they feel like they sort of complete each other almost in telling the story of, Gentleman's Agreement is sort of about this upper crust, more of the liberal, just, that sort of insidious nature of anti-Semitism. And then this is very overt and in the streets. And, a really violent act has been taken out. And it just feels like it's painting a really diverse sort of picture of this horrible, the anti-Semitism. So, yeah. I really enjoy it a lot. I think one interesting thing about the film, though, is that it was adapted from a novel that is about homophobia.
I know. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Wow. It would have never happened, but I would have loved to have seen it like that. But I think the substitution for anti-Semitism does the job. And also there's enough, it's subtle, but if you know it's there, or if you're just, somebody with an eye for that, there is enough queer coding in this movie that you can kind of make a case that it maybe is about both. And like the homophobia is even so forbidden that it's unspoken.
Yeah.
Like the scene earlier in the movie where Samuels, the man who was eventually murdered for being Jewish, is kind of talking to the character, I believe it's Mitch, in the bar. It feels very pick-up-y.
I would agree. Yeah. It gave
they
that
go
vibe.
back to their apartment for drinks, like that kind of thing. So again, if you're somebody at the time who was queer, or if you knew the original novel, or again, if you just have an eye for that, I think that is there.
Yeah.
Even if it's not explicit.
Yeah. And the novel is The Brick Foxhole. Great name. And with the Hays Code being what it was, there was just no way that they could even address homosexuality, even if they weren't really showing anything explicit.
Yeah.
I did see that the Wikipedia page mentioned that Todd Haynes was thinking about doing an adaptation that was more closely aligned with the novel. I don't know when that was updated. I don't know if that's still happening, but I would be very curious to see how that would turn out.
Yeah, I would love to see a remake of this more accurate to the novel. Because I think it needs to be corrected. I really do think the movie does a good job of saying and not saying at the same time what it's really about. But I would love to see it explore those themes in the time period.
Yeah. And Robert Ryan, who is the one who is nominated for supporting actor, I think is very good. And he has like that towering, menacing presence to him. And he's playing sort of, to not spoil things too much, he's sort of the biggest perpetrator, I guess, of the anti-Semitism. I think he's really, really strong.
Yeah. I mean, he's very much almost like a Gaston in Beauty and the Beast character. Like you can see why other people would admire him and flock to him and maybe ape his values in a way.
Yeah.
Which again speaks to the, the way that hate spreads. It's, from, among other things, people who are given a platform.
From the top down. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. We also have Gloria Graham, who is playing kind of I guess like a call girl kind of a role.
Yeah, it really feels like the kind of thing that, and again, I haven't read the novel, but in the novel it reads as, I'm sure, sex worker, whereas in this she's kind of
it's vague
dance hall girl who has a job. Yeah.
Yeah, and also a pimp.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, I don't know. It really, I think, again, it says so much without saying anything.
Yeah, but she's very fun and very vivacious in a way that she typically is in these kinds of films. So
yeah, she's I like her in this. It is interesting though because and this kind of speaks to the movie's Oscar success as a whole being pretty unique. She's a pretty typical noir character. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that this noir ascends to the ranks of being Oscar nominated. And I think it probably has to do with the social relevance of it. But, everybody's kind of doing typical noir stuff. It just happens to be this is the time the Academy, ordained it worthy.
Right. Yes. Good point. And I love just seeing a movie that's nominated for Best Picture from this era that is mercifully short.
Yeah, I mean...
just under 90 minutes.
Yeah. I do not envy you having to watch all those movies in the 60s.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot. I'm still trying to just sort of catch up to myself there. But anyway, Juan Carlos Ollano asked us 2 films about anti-Semitism. How did Gentleman's Agreement triumph over Crossfire?
I mean, I think it speaks to what we said before about it being more Oscar-friendly. Gentleman's Agreement is about anti-Semitism at like cocktail parties and spoken, but not necessarily acted upon.
Which voters would be, they feel like they can identify with that.
Yes, I'm sure that people in Hollywood have experienced that, which is of course obviously a very insidious and pervasive form of a hate. Yeah. But Crossfire, I think, because it is more of a grimy world and it's very small in scale, it's kind of easier to go to maybe like, I don't know if people would dismiss it outright as saying it is not part of their world, but it doesn't maybe feel as relevant to voters' life, I imagine.
Right.
I also wonder how much, because it's really interesting that it's a movie, Crossfire, set 2 years and released 2 years after World War II ends, and it's starring soldiers as murderers and conspirators.
Yeah.
And really kind of, I wonder if that maybe had something to do with turning some voters off, but if that were the case, it probably wouldn't even be nominated, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there was something special with again, having it relate to anti-Semitism that was like that added social relevance thing that made the Academy be like, okay, this is more important than the average RKO sort of B movie.
Yeah. Yeah, but like we said, it is kind of interesting that it's almost a coincidence that there's 2 anti-Semitic films because this one was not supposed to be about anti-Semitism originally.
Right. Yeah. Again, I'd like to see a remake. Would be very interesting. Well, here comes Glenda Miss Jackson if you're nasty again.
Here she is.
Yep.
Hello.
And all she has to say is justice for Gloria Graham for Crossfire.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, love her.
I mean, her and Celeste Holm really occupy a similar but like 2 sides of the same coin kind of characters where they come in, they have some snappy one-liners, and then they leave.
Yeah.
Gloria Graham has a little bit more influence on the actual plot, I think, but I do find Celeste Holm's performance a little bit more enjoyable.
Yes.
And I'm sure voters felt the same.
I would agree. And then Gloria Graham would get her win in a few years.
Yeah, she's fine.
Yeah. I think things are fine the way they worked out.
Agreed.
So this is from Ronaldo Sosa saying, do you think that if Crossfire had covered homophobia instead of anti-Semitism like the source material did, it would have gotten as much awards attention?
I mean, it's kind of a moot point. It just would not be made. Like, it would not.
Yeah.
It's kind of an impossible question to answer because we would not be watching that movie today.
Yeah.
And I think even if it was made in some sort of like guerrilla independent way, it still wouldn't have crossed Academy's radar for a lot of reasons.
That's the thing. That's what I was going to say. Like, if this was actually made, even with that code being in place, they wouldn't have even watched it.
Yeah, no way.
So, yay, Academy. Let's see. Let's get to our final Best Picture nominee, which is The Bishop's Wife. So, we just got done talking about a film similar to Gentleman's Agreement. Now let's talk about a film similar to Miracle on 34th Street in a few ways.
Yep.
So, yeah, The Bishop's Wife, set around Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a bishop.
Go on.
Stay with me here.
What else he got?
You see, he has this wife.
Oh, whoa, hold on.
They have a bit of tension because he's very focused on trying to get this new cathedral built and sort of find the money. But, here comes an angel, played by Cary Grant.
It's relatable, we know.
You know, the same old story.
He wants a cathedral, she wants an ugly hat. It's tale as old as time.
It really is, yeah. And she sort of starts to fall in love with the angel.
Yeah, that really kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
I'd seen this movie before, and it kind of is a lot of unspoken tension and like chemistry between this Earth being and this angel. And then when they really start to make that explicit, I was kind of shocked is a strong word, but I was surprised.
It piqued your interest. Yes.
Yeah, I was intrigued.
Yeah. They have a nice little ice skating moment that's very nice. So why do we think this film was nominated?
It's fine. It's very charming.
That sounded very dismissive, but yeah,
go on. I mean, I personally liked it more than Great Expectations, but it's still near the bottom of the nominees for me. It was I believe it was a hit, so I'm pretty sure that every now and then a movie that captures the public attention, it kind of feels like necessary to put in there. It's also got some solid movie people in it that people would be happy to vote for, but it did get nominated for Best Director, which is interesting, over Miracle on 34th Street.
Yes, I do think it has more of a visual identity to it than Miracle on 34th Street, so there's that. But otherwise, it's just a very charming little story that I wouldn't say is super great, but I can definitely see it really connecting with people, and it's just very interesting also, by the way, that I feel like I've been talking about, and I will be talking about, a lot of films that involve like saving the church.
Yeah, you're about to get into it. I mean, it's what we were talking about with Miracle on 34th Street being oddly non-religious at all, and this is nothing but.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's interesting that kind of a story really managed to connect a lot with not only moviegoers but Oscar voters that really connected to these kinds of stories.
Yeah.
Come to the Stable getting 7 nominations, for example. Sure.
I mean, you got to go to the Stable.
I love seeing a nun play tennis. Yeah, again, I think it's cute. I think Cary Grant is very charming and handsome.
Yeah.
And I don't really have a lot to say about it.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I watched it and I wrote down like 3 little notes and that was it.
Loretta Young is also in this, our Best Actress winner. Not for this, but for The Farmer's Daughter. I think that may have potentially helped her a bit.
I agree.
Having a year.
That win is obviously kind of an absolute mystery, but I if I had to point to something, I would say, being in a different Best Picture nominee is not going to help you.
Agreed. And we got 0 questions for it.
All right.
So let's move on to our Should Have Been a Contender segment, shall we?
Sure.
This is where we discuss other films not nominated for Best Picture, any old film that came out in 1947. So, Cody, do you have something at the top of your list you want to talk about here?
I do. So this is kind of, I'm not quite sure if this would be counted for this year's Oscars. It's one of those things where release dates were a little bit trickier to pin down back then, at least in terms of what I was able to find. But I believe this was released in America in 1947, and that's the French Jean Cocteau Beauty and the Beast.
Ah, yes.
It's a absolutely magical film. It's a French adaptation of the original fairy tale. And what I love about it is that France was ravaged by war at this time. So it was filmed like in the recovery period of the war, and they still found time to, grasp onto something artistic and beautiful. And part of what makes it so magical is that they had to, use a lot of really, they had to come up with their own like ways of doing things. Like it is very kind of thrown together in a way. The sets are very sparse but still ornate. It's really kind of a miracle of a movie. There's one sequence in particular where Belle enters the castle for the first time, and it's like all in slow motion, and it's some of the most beautiful filmmaking I've ever seen, especially from this time period.
I have not seen this one.
Oh, you gotta. It's gorgeous.
Sounds like everything I would love. And I'm very intrigued by that little summary there. So
it's definitely worth checking out. I'm sure it's pretty readily available. I know it's the Criterion. I'm not sure if it's on the app, but looks like it is. Just found it.
Well, there we go.
The Criterion app. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, nice. Well, I would like to talk about a film that I know that you are not a big fan of. but it came out this year. I know this because I stalked your letterbox for a little bit.
Oh, okay.
As one does. And that is Black Narcissus.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a fan of is strong. I thought it was definitely fine.
I see.
I know I'm in the extreme minority with that. I was looking at many other people's who I respect letterbox reviews, and I felt a little bit left out in the cold by everybody else's adoration of it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, well, it's a very celebrated film, but that doesn't mean you have to love it. So,
well, here's the thing.
Worries.
I just like the story to me didn't really inherently grip me. But I will say the visuals are some of the best I've seen from this time period.
Correct.
I can't recall off the top of my head more impressive Technicolor cinematography. It looks unbelievable, and it's absolutely, even though I didn't love it overall as a story, worth watching just for that.
Yes. Well, we just got done talking about the Red Shoes in 1948, and here we have another very famous Powell and Pressburger film that has beautiful cinematography that could probably, I feel like these two films back to back really rival any Technicolor film that came out in this time period. But yeah, tackling some very interesting dark territory and centering women again. And this is, here we go again, about a group of nuns.
Yeah.
Who are sort of trying to develop a school, I think, in the Himalayan mountains. And some of them start to give in to temptation, let's just say.
Well, I love that. Yeah,
yes.
always going to love that.
Yes. And yeah, the film is very famous for just the matte painting backgrounds that you see when you're looking over the cliff.
Oh, yeah. Every time a nun went to ring the bell, I was excited.
Yeah, exactly. Just really breathtaking. And yeah, I mean, another great example of beautiful, lush color work that is done by Powell and Pressburger. And
yeah, and even though it's obviously filmed on a set, they did a really good job of making sure that you don't forget that this is like set on top of a mountain. There was like clearly a good portion of the budget was spent on fans because the nuns' habits are constantly whipping around as they're walking through the school, and they're constantly windblown, and it really is. It's really good at setting that template of where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And great sort of close-up camera work as well, just to sort of, I think, just suggest like the inner turmoil of a lot of these nuns. Deborah Carr playing the Sister Superior here. And it's this dichotomy between her being more of a virtuous sort of nun, and then we have Sister Ruth, who really just gives in to desire and lust.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, personally, I love this kind of story, and I just another thing about this film is, considering this subject matter, it was quite controversial, especially with the Catholic Legion of Decency.
Okay, well, the fact that they found it controversial makes me like it a little more.
Yeah. And I believe that the reason they suggested it to be sort of improper is that the film, as they say it, sort of suggests that the Catholic religion is this savior in a way of like freaks and undesirable people. And they didn't really want these kinds of people to be associated with the church. Which
that is a strange
I would say
read on the movie.
Is not a very Christian sentiment, for one.
No. Wow.
But yeah.
I mean, I wasn't raised Catholic, so I don't really have a grasp on what this kind of, the things that they're talking about in this really mean. So that's kind of what I'm bringing to the table. But I will say, just from our little discussion here, it's going to go up half a star in my rating because you brought a new appreciation to it. So
well, wow, look at that.
Yep.
Look at that.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. My impact. We got a question from Gordon at Mark Wahlberg.
Hello.
Who said, Black Narcissus received 2 nominations and 2 wins, both very deserved. What else do you think it deserved, if anything? Well, Cody thinks nothing.
Hey, hold on.
Okay, what else do you think it could be nominated for here?
Well, there was no costume design that win category this year, which is odd.
Because it was invented in 1948.
Okay, well, if there was one this year, if they decided to do it a year early, I would say definitely that, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't remember a score off the top of my head, but I'm sure it was good. You tell me.
Wasn't that memorable for me, the
All right,
score,
never
but solid enough.
I would definitely nominate it for direction over The Bitch's Wife pretty easily.
Yes, agreed.
That's pretty undeniable, even not loving the movie.
Yeah. I think I would also nominate Deborah Carr.
Sure. Here's the thing. A lot of white women wearing nuns' habits.
Sure.
I could not tell them apart,
Okay.
to be honest. Not to make myself sound like a very unintellectual movie watcher, but there was times where I was like, hold on a minute. Which one's this?
There's a lot of sisters.
Whichever one she was, I'm sure she was great.
Yeah. She's the
I got it by the end, but the first half I was a little lost in the mountains.
Right. And I mean Kathleen Byron, who plays the one who really is going out on left field. I think she had
some
fun.
good crazy eyes.
Yes, very good crazy eyes. Love those close-ups. I would rather not mention the fact that Gene Simmons is in this.
We're so close to not talking about her.
I just feel like it has to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Just that she is playing a non-white woman, even though she is very white.
Oh, very white, yeah.
Yeah.
She's even in another movie that she's in Great Expectations too, so
yeah.
She had quite a little year.
Yes. But anyway, highly recommended. Also on the Criterion channel, I believe. So you have no excuse. If anything, just you don't even need the volume on. Just look at those beautiful backgrounds.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Do you want to talk a little bit more about A Double Life?
Yeah. Speaking of inappropriate casting, yeah, this is an interesting movie. I really liked the concept of it. It's the idea that this actor who is cast to play a torturous role starts to see that kind of seep into their daily life. Like I said, it's very almost Black Swan. It's a little bit like Birdman in a way. Unfortunately, the role that he's been cast to play is Othello, so there is, a good chunk of blackface in this, but I kind of reconciled it by pretending that the reason he's all torn up over this role is because he inherently knows he shouldn't be playing it. But that was my read on it.
Yeah, I think he's really good here, Coleman.
Agreed.
I think he does a really good job of sort of blurring the lines between these two personas. There's a lot of range to the performance because obviously we see him performing in those theatrical moments, and also you just see himself, the actor, going just totally mad. But then you also have some subtler moments where you could see just on his face how completely lost he is within himself.
Yeah, I mean it's something that probably could have been easy to make very over the top, but he doesn't. He really sells the build up of insanity across the course of the movie.
Yeah.
It's also very well directed. It got a Best Director nomination, and it's very deserved.
George Cukor. I would agree that he adds a little extra something to this story that visually is very striking.
Definitely.
Also, I believe this film, yes, it has Shelley Winters. So
yeah, playing her early sex pot roles, which are always fun to see.
Oh yes, always a standout there. We got quite a few questions actually about A Double Life, in particular for Ronald Coleman. This is from Joey Ailman saying just simply Gregory Peck or Ronald Coleman.
Ronald Coleman pretty easily, but I will say, and this is a little bit of a tangent, my choice for Best Actor is actually John Garfield in Body and Soul, which we can discuss in a second. But between the two of them, I would go Coleman.
I would also go Coleman. Gregory Peck, again, would be perfectly fine being taken care of with To Kill a Mockingbird. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine the way things worked out. Let's not upset the apple cart here.
No.
All right. Ronaldo Sosa said, with the Academy's usual dislike of unlikable characters in lead roles, why did Coleman win over Peck, who was playing an Atticus Finch-type character in the Best Picture winner?
Well, like we talked about, the Coleman performance is pretty damn Oscar baity. Yeah. It's, a performance within a performance. It's over the top. There's transformative, insane moments. He was a veteran actor. This is not his first or second nomination even, and Gregory Peck was still fairly young, which we know they don't love to reward anybody below the age of like 60 in this category. Yeah. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's not like the movie was out of nowhere. I mean, it wins Best Score. It's nominated for director and screenplay, so it wasn't just a one and done. It was up there for Academy watchers to consider, and if there was more nominees in Best Picture, I wouldn't be surprised if it was there.
This was number 6.
I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the Gregory Peck performance, I don't know if there's a lot of showy stuff there. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, his Oscar clip moment is probably when he confronts the concierge at the anti-Semitic hotel. But even that is underplayed smartly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense if he was screaming. But yeah, it's not as quite Oscar-y as Coleman's performance.
A little too even-keeled. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Andrew Carden, our friend.
Hello, Andrew.
Thoughts on why A Double Life missed in picture despite its director, screenplay noms, and lead actor win?
Well, that's the interesting thing is that you go, oh, well, they must have, they can knock out the Bishop's Wife in picture to put Double Life in there. But then Bishop's Wife is weirdly in director. So you go, okay, well, what wasn't in director? Oh, Miracle on 34th Street, which is probably the runner-up for picture. So it's a weird case where I don't really know I don't really know if there's room for it. But it definitely is number 6, like you said.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty dark overall.
Sure.
I don't know if it's a super crowd pleaser kind of a film. And it also is a little bit on the smaller scale, feels like. I don't know.
Yeah, it's noir-y, which, I mean, Crossfire is nominated this year, but they don't generally love that genre.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he also said, did Shelley Winters deserve a supporting actress nomination? And then a little smiley face.
Oh, Andy. Well, yeah, why not? I mean, she was good. She's very much like the waitress who couldn't be bothered, which is always a fun role to see.
Yeah.
Doesn't really rise above to anything astounding, I would say, but that would, again, be inappropriate with this part, the way it's written. So she does her job.
She does, yes. I think, generally speaking, she's pretty great in everything. I don't know if I would nominate her for this, but, she got 2 Oscars. She's fine. Let's talk about The Farmer's Daughter.
Okay.
Sorry, that sounded lascivious in a way that I didn't intend. Yeah, this is our other lead acting winner, Loretta Young, who we saw in The Bishop's Wife. Great year for her. And she is playing the titular role of the farmer's daughter, who goes to the city and becomes a maid and then sort of becomes a congresswoman.
Yep, she kind of, strangely falls into Congress in a way, which is
into Congress.
Yeah. She's like the original AOC. She starts, with a working class job and finds herself a politician, which is always, inspiring. But this movie is just okay. It is very fine.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's fine. I mean, I don't really know what there is to say about this, but
the only note I wrote was, wow, this is late. So
the character has very progressive views, surprisingly so for 1947, I would say, and she's sort of just fighting for basic human rights and fighting against politicians sort of being duplicitous and corrupt. And long story short, she made some points.
Yeah, and I like that the quote-unquote bad politician in this that she's running against is pretty out and out bad. He's outwardly racist and very bigoted. Yeah. And I think that kind of fits a theme that we're seeing this year with Gentleman's Agreement and Crossfire. These very like we won the war, now what? Now we have to figure out who we are as a country.
Yeah.
So I can see why this movie made an impact with the Academy. I'm just kind of surprised that it ended up being a winner.
I think the film overall is just a little too earnest in some ways, but it's cute enough that I guess I feel like just an Academy, and especially let's just say an older male Academy, I think would be charmed by a film and a performance of just like this woman who comes from nothing and pulls up, her bootstraps and just is being bold and charming and fun.
Yeah, she's a white immigrant. She's very, she's very idealistic.
Yeah, and this performance feels like you don't have to. She's very likable, I guess is what I'm saying. You don't have to feel like you have to work to really like what she's doing here.
Right. She's always doing something that the audience will either find charming or like in the right.
Yeah, right.
When it comes to the political stuff.
Yeah. And I'm not putting this anywhere near like what Judy Holliday did with Born Yesterday, but it sort of feels like that sort of thing of just sort of a plucky woman who is cute and just is getting out there and saying what's on her mind.
Yeah, I mean, she does, she does the job, Loretta Young. I don't know what else you could do with this performance. It is just surprising that this is something that won an Oscar.
Well, why don't we talk about that?
Okay.
Yeah, so Fritz and the Oscars said, just in general, how do you think the Best Actress race turned out the way it did?
I mean, I think it's what we were saying about she was in another Best Picture nominee. Her movie is an hour shorter, at least, than the presumed frontrunner's movie, Morning Becomes Electra, starring Rosalind Russell. So it's definitely a more accessible movie. And I think, again, like you said, they love to reward young, plucky stars, especially back then, but, even to this day. So it's both surprising, I guess, and not surprising at the same time.
Yeah. And to address the Rosalind Russell of it all, this was sort of the sort of a Glenn Close sort of upset of the 1940s, of just everyone thinking that she's got it in the bag. She's been in the industry for a little while, and this feels like it's finally her time. And sort of people taking for granted whether Oscar voters would actually sit down and watch the film.
Exactly.
And then seeing an alternative here, which is very, very different. And you look at Morning Becomes Electra, which I have not seen because it's very long.
Either, sorry.
And very unavailable.
Yep, that's the other thing.
It's almost 3 hours, I think.
It's at least 2.5 for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. It's like just 5 minutes short of 3 hours.
There you go. I just feel like voters were like, this feels like homework.
Yeah.
And also it wasn't even that well received at the time, critically. So it's just a bad combination. And as great as she might have been, I think the film really probably hurt her in the end.
I mean, I could picture all of the people, on the Bishop's Wife team at RKO voting for Loretta Young in this category because it would boost their movie, just like that, all that kind of insidery stuff. There's so many factors that can pay off and lead to this kind of win. But I think that's, there's a lot to be said about it.
Yeah. Juan Carlos Ollano asked us, why was Loretta Young nominated for The Farmer's Daughter and not The Bishop's Wife?
I kind of preferred her in The Bishop's Wife, to be honest. Neither performance is something that I'm like, oh, wow, you got to give that an Oscar. But I think if I had to pick one, I would say The Bishop's Wife was a more engaging performance for me. She definitely has more emotionally to do in that one.
I sort of disagree. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like maybe the character in The Farmer's Daughter is a little bit more compelling, maybe for me personally.
I mean, she's doing an accent, so there's like that little degree of difficulty. Yeah.
I think they're both very decent performances that I would not have nominated if I was being honest.
That's the thing. I wouldn't nominate either one, frankly. But
but it is
that wasn't the question.
Kind of odd how that happens sometimes, though. When you're in a Best Picture nominee, you would have been in Best Actress, but you get in for something else. It happens.
Exactly.
Well, Ronaldo Sosa said, how much of a coincidence is it that you had two movies that won Oscars in the same year that featured Loretta Young ice skating with a love interest?
I wonder if she was just like, it was under her special skills on her resume. She's like, I'm a
skate.
really good ice skater. You gotta get me on the ice, coach.
Yes, the agent really was involved with making sure she got a skating scene in every film. I don't know. Weird.
It's just funny.
Yeah.
Why were there two Christmas movies this year?
Yeah, and the anti-Semitism movies, lots of weird little pairs happening here.
A lot of coinky dinks this year, yeah.
Well, let's talk about a spooky little movie. How about The Ghost and Mrs.
Okay.
Muir? The Ghost and Mrs. Muir.
Oh, so spooky.
Yes. Well, it has a ghost.
Yeah.
So this is a strange little movie, just about a woman who wants to live in a house that is haunted by a sea captain ghost played by Rex Harrison, and they strike up a cute little unexpected connection, and she kind of agrees to tell his story. And it's about them falling in love.
Yeah, I like that this is basically a sitcom.
Yes.
Like when the ghost reveals himself to her, she's not inherently scared. She's kind of just like, well, now what am I going to do? Which I love that. I think that's really funny in a way, even if it wasn't intentionally like outwardly comedic. But I thought this was a lovely little movie. It was very charming. You know, it was a great concept for a movie, especially back then. I had a good time with it.
Yeah, and I think you have to maybe buy into the love story to have it be super effective. But I did. I found it very poignant in the end.
Yeah. And the ending especially is like a shockingly nice and grounded moment for a movie that's otherwise pretty fantastical. And even though the ending is fantastical, it's very serene in a way.
And I love the score. Bernard
Yes,
Herrmann.
I love the score too.
Incredible, making the most of it. Just really very orchestral. So I love that. And
yeah.
I actually really like the two performances here. Gene Tierney playing the woman and Rex Harrison, I think, are both very good. And I don't know if they're super nomination worthy, but you know, I think they have cute chemistry.
Gene Tierney could have slid into Best Actress, and I wouldn't have batted an eye.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's a very deserved cinematography nomination.
Yes,
it's great. I would obviously vote for Great Expectations over it. I think that was the more worthy winner, but I'm glad it got nominated.
Definitely. And it's funny you say that about sitcom because there's been a few adaptations of this story, and one of them was a TV show in the 60s.
I mean, it's exactly that. It's a situation that is comedic. Like it,
exactly.
You can milk a lot of moments out of, you know, the ghost that I have to live with.
Hijinks ensue. I think I read there was even a musical at one point.
That sounds right.
So, yeah, we're getting a lot out of this story. So, do you have another film you want to talk about here?
I really enjoyed Body and Soul, which I mentioned before would be my Best Actor winner. It's a solid noir-y boxer movie, and as somebody who has absolutely zero affinity for sports and would never be caught dead watching a boxing match, I really do find boxing movies really inherently fascinating.
Choreography.
Something about I mean, you know, I love choreography,
yes.
But I think it's also something about making real and physical an actual struggle that we've seen up to that point with the characters. Because, you know, usually these movies are dealing with like turmoil and should I fight, should I not fight, trouble at home, and then having that character be like literally beaten down or vice versa. I think it really is an interesting personification of theme in general. And this movie really feels like a template for movies that would come later. You know, like obviously Rocky, the ending fight in this movie feels very Rocky. And yeah, the lead performance by John Garfield is really, really great. I recommend it, if nothing else, for that.
Did not get a chance to watch this one, but it wins film editing, which was very interesting.
Yep. Deserve it, too. It's really well cut, especially the boxing stuff.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Based on your recommendation, I think it sounds better than the average sort of film about this sort of thing. So
yeah, I was a little hesitant going in, but it was solid. Definitely worth checking out.
Very nice.
It's on YouTube.
Like a few films here. Yeah. They're fully available on YouTube.
Thank you. Copyrights?
Yeah, pretty much. I want to talk about Out of the Past.
Yes.
Which is a film noir. Here we are again, starring Robert Mitchum, as like a guy who's involved with gangsters at one point in his life, and now he's this owner of a gas station, and then one of those people from the past comes out of the woodwork, and he once again becomes very involved in that whole world again. And we have the late Kirk Douglas here playing the gangster in another early role for him, and I think he's really great for these kinds of roles because he's very charismatic, and he's also kind of terrifying sometimes.
Yeah, he's got a great yet scary smile.
Yes, very, very jokery.
Mm-hmm.
But the MVP for me is actually Jane Greer, who does not get nominated, but this film doesn't get any nominations, I should say.
Not nowhere.
Yeah, but Jane Greer is playing like the femme fatale role here as Kirk Douglas's girlfriend, who double crosses him and gets involved with Robert Mitchum, and she is, I think, really great because you don't have like a strong sense from scene to scene whether her feelings are genuine or if she's just playing everybody. And I think she toes the line of that expectation really well. So
yeah, it's this movie as a whole is really kind of feels like an urtext for film noir. Like if I had to recommend one movie to somebody to kind of show them the tropes and filmmaking styles and dialogue and storytelling beats of a film noir, you know, the complicated storyline, the double talk, all that stuff.
All the
I think this
types,
is a pretty yes, exactly. This is a pretty solid recommendation if you're looking to see what that genre is like.
Yeah, totally.
It's really engaging. I liked this one.
Yeah. Well, our friend Brandon Stanwyck has a question.
Hello, Brandon.
Saying, how many nominations would you give to Out of the Past? And then he says the answer is at least several.
I would agree, at least several, for sure. I think the screenplay definitely deserves some recognition. I would say probably cinematography, editing for sure. I think it cuts between the literal past and the present really well without ever being lost. Plus, there's a lot of voiceover that is perfectly timed, all that kind of stuff.
Art direction,
maybe? Yeah. Art direction, yeah. I think Robert Mitchum probably could have gotten nominated for this. He's quite mysterious and iron-jawed.
Yeah, I think the three of them are very good. Robert Mitchum and Kirk Douglas and Jane Greer. I wouldn't have minded any of them being nominated. So yeah, probably like 6 or 7 nominations at this point. Yeah, but
I like the score too. There's a recurring theme that plays throughout. I don't know if it was a song that they were sampling or something, but it's very memorable.
Yeah. So, do you have another film? Possibly.
Let's see. Hold on. Okay, this isn't a recommendation, but it's worth talking about. The movie Song of the South comes out this year.
Yes.
Or at least is recognized by the Oscars. This is not at all a recommendation, but I actually have seen this movie. I worked in Disney World at Splash Mountain for a time, which is based on this movie. So I watched it as research.
Okay.
And cannot recommend it. It is not good. It is boring. It is racist. It is pretty stupid, to be honest.
What a great combination.
Yes. I mean, but obviously it's probably, besides Miracle on 34th Street, weirdly the movie from this Oscar year that is the most culturally relevant to this day, even though nobody has seen it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw this as a child. Have not revisited it.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah, I know, but well, an interesting element to this, as you alluded to, is James Baskett is given the Academy Honorary Award this year, and I quote, for his able and heartwarming characterization of Uncle Remus, friend and storyteller to the children of the world in Walt Disney's Song of the South.
All right. I mean, pretty obviously they just didn't want to actually nominate him. I think that's pretty well known that was what was going on there. And I think actually Disney had a hand himself in getting this award to him.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about that, but I think there's definitely some, thinly veiled conspiracy there.
And another one who had a hand in that was Hedda Hopper.
Okay.
Our old pal. And she really lobbied for this to happen and was very vocal about it. And the reason she used is that she sort of felt like this is the right thing for Hollywood to do, to give him this special award. Of course, not to nominate him organically, but
right, of course not. Yeah,
to just sort of give him this other award to, I don't know. I don't really know what the goal is other than just,
I mean, it's to say, no, we are not racist. We recognize, people of all colors. Look, we just gave this award to this man. So, of course not. But we would never nominate him in an actual category.
That sounds actually a lot like Hedda Hopper would say.
Well, it's very much similar to the Dorothy McGuire character in Gentleman's Agreement. No, I'm not racist. Look what I did.
Look what we did. We gave him the special non-competitive award.
So pretty hypocritical to then throw awards at Gentleman's Agreement for.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Kevin Clowder said, do you think James Baskett could have gotten a Best Actor or Best Supporting Actor nomination had Disney not pushed for him to get a Special Achievement Oscar? Also, the Special Achievement Oscar, worthwhile for the era or a patronizing attempt to dismiss controversy?
Definitely the latter, obviously.
Yes.
But I still don't think so. I think that, just like so many things would have kept him out of that race. Not that Hattie McDaniel had already won her award, so it wouldn't be he wouldn't be the first Black person to be nominated for an Oscar, but it still was a very white field all across the board.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it is a very similar character to Edmund Gwynn's character who wins. It's very jovial, doesn't have problems with anybody, friend to children type of character. It's just obviously in a very different setting.
Right. I'm afraid to say that he probably would not be nominated even if there was a campaign. It's just the nature of what the Academy was at that time, and some could argue still is.
Yeah, the movie does win Best Song, though, and is nominated for Best Score, which is, obviously the most endearing part of its legacy.
Yeah. But that's typically what Disney is winning and nominated for, is just for music. So not usually outside of that very often. Well, we got just this other question from Infinity Fire, which said, which film from this year is most deserving of a remake?
I mean, we kind of mentioned it, but I really would love to see Crossfire. Yeah, Crossfire done as a more faithful adaptation of the novel.
Yeah. Any others here? I think that's probably the one. But
I mean, Body and Soul basically has been remade 1,000 times because it's very prototypical of boxing movies.
Yeah. Great Expectations. That's also been made 1,000 times.
Yep. And like A Double Life, like I said, is very Black Swan, Birdman.
Yeah.
Bishop's Wife and Miracle on 34th Street both got remakes.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's see a remake of The Farmer's Daughter.
Okay.
I want to see what that story looks like in the year 2020.
I don't know how you'd even update that. There's nothing to like find similar in there.
It's an alternate reality, really, at this point.
Exactly.
But anyway, any other films you wanted to mention here?
No, that's literally every single film I've seen this year. So.
Perfect. All right. Well, when we come back, we will be delivering our verdict as to whether we think Gentleman's Agreement deserved Best Picture or if Miracle on 34th Street should have taken it.
Presentation of Academy Awards, the Oscars, the great day of the year in Hollywood. And producer Darryl Zanuck wins the honors for the best production of the year, Gentleman's Agreement.
I'm very proud to be here tonight. I want to thank Laura Hobson for writing a book. I want to thank Moss Hart for his screenplay.
Best Director of the Year, Elia Kazan of 20th Century Fox, who directed Gentleman's Agreement. The Oscar for the Best Actress goes to Loretta Young. Those much-coveted Academy Awards are presented one after another. Ronald Colman, whom the Committee of Judges has selected as the Best Actor of the Year. Then an Oscar for Celeste Holm. She wins the acclaim as the Best Supporting Actress.
Ladies and gentlemen, I had thought before tonight that I had already received the greatest reward that an actress can have, which is to play a part in a picture in which one so wholeheartedly believes, as Gentleman's Agreement. Thank you, everybody, for making this happen.
Best Supporting Actor, Edmund Gwenn of The Miracle on 34th Street.
Now I know there's a Santa Claus.
And we're back. So now we'll be delivering our verdict as to whether we think Gentleman's Agreement properly deserved Best Picture or if Miracle on 34th Street should have taken it. Cody Dericks, what is your verdict?
Here's the thing. My gut says Miracle on 34th Street, but I actually kind of can relate to what the Oscar voters were feeling, because even just the idea of hypothetically saying that should win Best Picture feels a little weird. It's the better movie overall, obviously, but it is mostly like charming and nice and good as opposed to, I think, important. So I don't want to fall into the trap of like an Oscar voter mindset and say, no, we have to reward Gentleman's Agreement because I like Miracle on 34th Street better. But even just hypothetically, I can see why it didn't win.
Yeah. This is, again, like you just said, a little bit tough, and I have to separate myself from just what the Oscars would do and if I were a voter. I just feel like Miracle on 34th Street is a better film overall.
Yeah.
Regardless of subject matter. And it has clearly endured more than Gentleman's Agreement.
Absolutely.
That I would say, hey, why not give it picture? Give Elia Kazan Best Director. Boom. That's it.
Sure.
That's what I would do.
Elia Kazan's direction is not super memorable, I'd say, though, outside of some really solid performance work.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would give Crossfire picture and director if I had a ballot, not between just the two of them.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. I think this is a little tough because looking at the whole lineup, I have a lot of like 3.5-star films here.
Yeah. Same.
That I don't have one that's just like this towering achievement per se. So I'm just
there's nothing here that feels like, oh my god, an absolute injustice on the Academy's part. Like Gentleman's Agreement winning, even though it's probably my number 3 of the category, is not the end of the world to me.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think I would still give Miracle on 34th Street the win of the 5, even though again it feels like the least essential, quote unquote.
Sure,
but still, I'm choosing my fave. So there you go.
Right. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So thanks, Cody. This was fun.
Thank you. I love being on the show. Of course, it's a treat.
We love to have you.
My God.
Yes, my God. So, of course, if you ever want to come back, open invitation.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I always appreciate that you do your homework up to the literal last minute.
I mean, yeah, I literally delayed the recording today to watch Body and Soul. So,
well, we appreciate it. So, where can people find more from you on the internet?
All right. I am all over the internet, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd at CodyMonster91. I'm currently taking a little hiatus from Twitter just for, you gotta hit pause every now and then, but
for
I'll
your
be back
body
eventually.
And soul.
My body and my soul.
Yeah.
And I do have a horror movie podcast. It's Halloweeners, a horror movie podcast. You can find us on all sorts of every single, podcast platform, and we're on Instagram and Twitter at HalloweenersPod. That also is on a little bit of a hiatus just because of self-isolation. We can't really be in the same room and record, my co-host and I, but there's a wonderful backlog of episodes that you are, more than welcome to listen to get you through these trying times.
Mm-hmm. It's a very fun and goofy show.
It is. Yeah, no, it is. It is very goofy for sure.
It's fun though.
Thank you.
And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Jacobson. The show is at Oscar Runner Up, and you can rate, review, and subscribe anywhere you find podcasts. You can also, if you want to hear even more Oscar nonsense, go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup and hear some bonus episodes. You can hear Cody talking about Grand Budapest Hotel. You can hear him talking about Babel, which I know everyone wants to hear right now. Yes.
People love Babel.
They do. Babbling about Babel.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, thanks again, Cody.
Of course. Thank you, as always.
Yes. And I will bid you all adieu.